word,
Yeah,
man.
you can do whatever you want. Plus, we're West Texans. That's a whole other level of freedom.
Exactly.
Hey, my name is Jim Ward. I'm a musician from El Paso, Texas. I also own this restaurant, Eloise, with my wife, Christine. During the pandemic, I started to have some conversations with friends and friends of friends on Instagram Live. Now that things have opened up a little bit, we've started to be able to do it in person. We call it Let's Get a Drink. So, let's get a drink. Hey, this is Jim Ward. Thanks for joining us on Let's Get a Drink. Today I'm with my good friend Veronica Escobar from the great town of El Paso. She happens to also represent us in Congress. We're on top of the Stanton House Hotel on the rooftop terrace, overlooking beautiful downtown El Paso. So anyhow, thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, Jim, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
And today we're drinking water.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're not drinking water. Today we're drinking water.
It's early.
It's my favorite water though, which is agua de piedras from Monterey. Have you ever had it?
This is the first time. It's delish.
So good. Better than Topo
Put a little
Chico.
vodka in there.
A little vodka.
Some ice cubes.
Or just more vodka. First off, thanks for taking the time. Obviously, I know you're super busy. You were just telling me you've been home a few days at a time since Christmas, right?
Yeah.
So you're on like full rock tour schedule.
It's
except
crazy.
in DC. Yeah.
It's crazy.
How do you spend your days in DC?
Super busy. I have no control over my schedule. It's my team who controls my time, but it's nonstop. It starts at 8 a.m. I'm lucky if I get home by 9 p.m. The days are really long.
Yeah.
We pack a lot in one day. I serve on 3 committees and 4 subcommittees. And so there's just a lot always going on. I'm in House leadership, which is an incredible privilege. You basically run for a leadership position, and your peers elect you. And so I was elected to leadership, and so there's a lot of meetings around that, a lot of work around that. And then I meet with folks, with groups, with stakeholders, constituents who are in DC. Then there's always fundraising in the evening, other events, and so it's constantly on the go.
Yeah.
And then when I'm home, the wonderful thing about it is not only is the pace a lot slower, but the people I meet with are all El Pasoans, so it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a lot to process.
And then we have votes. So
Right.
we can never predict when votes
Yeah.
are going to be called in any given day. And if it's in the middle of a hearing, we'll pause the hearing and we'll run over to the Capitol, vote for however many votes there are. If I'm in the middle of a meeting and the bells go off, I gotta stop the meeting and go vote.
It's so wild. And you were kind enough to let my family and I take a tour of the Capitol a couple of years ago and see all this stuff. And it kind of blew my mind how small and eloquent and beautiful. And it was really breathtaking. So again, thanks for that.
Oh,
but
of
also,
course.
this is something that all American citizens have the right to do, right? We can all go and check it out.
That's
And I
right.
super encourage you, not from like just from the point of view that I went and saw it. And it really is, one, you sort of, it gives it a little more gravity than just the news cycle that we see and the whatever, and it kind of puts it a little bit more in perspective, and I love it. I've always loved politics, but to see it in that way was super cool. And now I'm just thinking about you running all over the building and the tunnels, and the tunnel was cool.
And I hope anyone who ever goes to DC will reach out to us so that we can try to schedule a Capitol tour for them. It really is inspiring. It's awesome in from multiple facets. The incredible architecture of it, the history of it, both long time history, but also recent history. January 6th. There's just a lot to take in and process.
It is so wild.
Yeah.
Everybody should do it, I think.
Yeah.
Anyways, one of the things we always talk about is how you got here on this show, which I want to get to in a second. But first, I want to ask before I move on, what's your favorite part of your day?
My favorite part of my day is going home at the end of the night.
Yeah.
My daughter, my 24-year-old, is my roommate in DC.
So
and
rad.
yes, which is so amazing.
Yeah.
And 2 years ago, my son was my roommate for a little bit of time. And there's something so fantastic about spending time with your adult children.
Yeah.
You know, they're grown-ups,
Yeah.
and I love to hear about her day and what happened, and for us to gossip or watch bad TV together,
Yeah.
or you know, just to talk.
Yeah.
That is so soothing, healing, and wonderful for me,
Yeah.
is to see
I can imagine.
my baby at the end of the day.
It's a little nicer to go home to that than an empty apartment in DC, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How did you, because somebody was telling me the other day that you were their 8th grade teacher.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Who
They're like,
was it? Yes, I taught 8th grade for 1 year.
Yeah. So he was there last night at the Kastner Range thing.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. Was it Steven?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God. You know,
Yeah.
I saw him and I wanted to swing by and say
Yeah.
hello, and I ended up getting caught up in different
He's
conversations.
like, my friend's like, because he's like, watching the State of the Union, my 8th grade teacher is there. And I'm like, I know, it's wild.
What a trip.
It's wild. But also I think it's cool because it's very El Paso. Like,
Yeah.
it's a very El Paso story. Like, we're a humble community. It's not a
Yeah.
big deal. Like, you're an 8th grade teacher, then you're a congressperson. Like, it's
Yeah.
pretty amazing, but also totally within the realms of possibility. So how did you get from, you were born here, right?
Born here, third
Okay.
generation.
Yeah. So born here on to now. Like, what was a quick trajectory of your,
Oh my God, it was a circuitous route, not a direct line.
such a good word.
Yeah, and I've told folks, you know, always be open to whatever possibility is in front of you. You just never know where that open door will take you. That's definitely been the case for me. So I was a teacher. I got back to El Paso after graduate school. I went to NYU and got a master's degree. Had just completed my program at NYU. I needed a break. My intention was to get a PhD in Chicano literature, but to do it on the West Coast at one of the UC schools. But I was going to take a little break. I came home, got really deeply involved in immigration advocacy work, and was teaching part-time at multiple places. I was teaching part-time at EPCC, at UTEP, and then I did a stint for 1 year as an 8th grade teacher. But that year really changed my life, and the immigration advocacy work really pulled me in. And I you know, the same story as many other El Pasoans. You just fall back in love with the community.
Yeah.
For, you know, coming back as an adult with a different perspective, without the teenage angst,
Right.
with 20-something angst
Yeah.
instead. And I just decided I never wanted to leave again. And then after that one stint, I never did 8th grade again. It was like
It's a tough year.
not for me.
Yeah.
And I really just enjoyed the college faculty work. Did that for 10 years. And in that decade, I volunteered for a number of candidates, kept getting more and more involved civically. And then when Ray Caballero ran for mayor in 2001 and he won, he asked me to go work for him. And I had just gotten a promotion at UTEP. And that morning that he offered me the job, I said, no, thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate it, but I'm going to stick to teaching. And I changed my mind and went to work for him. And
How long
that
did it take
changed
to
my
change your
life.
mind?
Probably about 10 minutes. And then I called him back and I said, you know what, let me think through this and let's talk about it. And then it completely changed my life. Worked for him for 2 years. Then when he lost, he served one term, and back then the mayoral terms were 2 years. I then ran a nonprofit called Community Scholars. Loved that. And then former Mayor Caballero called and nagged me over the course of a summer to run for local office. And it took some convincing, but he convinced me and I did it. And then I ran for county government, served there for over a decade. And then when Beto decided to run for Senate, Trump was in office, and I loved the work that Beto had done in Congress, and I thought we needed to continue a strong voice, especially in the face of the Trump administration.
Did it take
and ran for
much
them.
arm twisting?
For Congress?
Yeah.
No.
Just because of the state of America.
Exactly.
Right.
I had never thought about Congress before. And in fact, I was finishing up my 3rd term in county government. I served 1 term as county commissioner and then 2 terms as county judge. And we'd done amazing, beautiful things. The Children's Hospital, UMC expansion and clinics, really increased our funding for Texas Tech, for the medical school, all this great healthcare work. And then a lot of cleaning up of local government work and professionalizing it. and I was ready to step away from public life. And I actually wanted to open up a downtown business. And I was working on my business plan and thinking through the kind of loan I'd need to get. And then that's when Beto made the announcement. And I just was so deeply disturbed by the Trump administration that it felt like I was, running toward trying to take action against something that was assaulting our community.
So, what obviously this week is at least one mass shooting that I know of, and it was Nashville, and it's heartbreaking because it's little kids, which is somehow worse. I don't know. Gutting, I think, is what it is. And I know you're from this community. I'm from this community. We lived through this as well as a community. And then we sort of immediately get it, and I'm guilty of this as well. Like, what I posted on Instagram, like I'm angry.
I wanted to be like, hell yeah.
I know you can't, so I will. But I was kind of talking to you about this earlier. Like, one thing that I've noticed since I posted my message is that I've taken a step back on being angry or assuming what people are going to say and let them sort of take the first swing and then approach them softly. You know what I mean? So a comment will come back to me like, you'll never do this, you'll never take our guns, blah, blah, blah. And I'll say, hey, look, I totally appreciate what you're saying. I believe in the Second Amendment. I'm not against people having personal firearms or hunting. I mean, we live in Texas. This is one thing I get a lot. You're from Texas, how could you ever say that? Well, we're not all hunters. I don't hunt. I'm vegetarian, you're vegetarian. I need not do that. But I totally understand it and respect that culture and that lifestyle. And I know our country was built this way. And I'm wondering how much because I know what we see. This is a very long question, sorry.
No.
I know what we see. What is it like there in these conversations? Is it as rigid as it seems to us, or is there more empathy than we see?
That's a great question, because you're right. I mean, what people see on the surface in Washington is not always, how it is. And there's a lot of bipartisanship. And I am someone who wants bipartisanship. That's the best way, number one, to get stuff done that will be permanent. But number two, it's a way to kind of heal the country. We're so divided. Everybody's always ready to kind of jump all over one another. And I'm guilty of that too. I have, I've had my share of angry tweets and, angry comments and snide remarks. And it's especially difficult with those issues that are so deeply personal, like guns, after what happened in our community. And you're right, seeing that little babies are being mowed down by these assault-style weapons, and the people who purchase them mostly legally, and that can't motivate change. It's frustrating. We had a press conference, in fact, a few days ago on the House steps, and I let my anger, I told my staff afterwards, like, I think I came off way too angry, because I am angry. But I was really angered by a colleague who I like very much, and who is in many ways a gentle soul, a Republican who, every time I see him, he's chipper, and we exchange pleasantries and we have nice conversations. But he stood on the steps of the House right after the Nashville shooting, and he said, we're not going to fix this. And the outrage I felt at that, and it was like, what the hell do you mean we're not going to fix this? You've chosen not to fix this. This is a choice. This has become a policy choice. And I'm not answering your question directly because it's a hard thing to answer. Some of these folks who are so immovable, it's cowardice. It truly is. It's cowardice. And they may feel like we should do something more, but they know they can't say that because they'll get unelected. And they don't take the time to engage their community and kind of think through solutions. So it's the lazy person's way out. And as a result, the crisis keeps growing and growing and growing, and it gets harder to fix. And, we passed this bipartisan bill last Congress, it didn't accomplish much, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, and people were celebrating the fact that we had some action in decades. We'd finally taken some action. Well, it didn't change anything because we're not attacking the gun problem.
Right.
And the problem is we're awash in guns, and we're a country awash in the deadliest type of guns.
Right.
You know, I went on a trip it was a bipartisan trip with senators and members of Congress a couple of weekends ago to Mexico City, and a big topic was the cartels. And I told my Republican colleagues, if you want to impact the cartels, the best thing we can do is ban assault-style weapons. Because a huge majority of them are going across the border and arming the cartels. So we are creating the misery in our country and some of the misery in our neighbor's country as well.
And really just gun makers are profiting, right?
That's right.
And I know it's not as easy as Republicans are funded by NRA, so they can't do anything, but it does seem like there's this line, and I was trying to explain this to somebody that I was going back and forth with on Instagram, like, there's clearly a line between military weapons and civilian weapons. Like, you can't buy a Apache attack helicopter, right? You can't buy that. That would be insane. So why can't we just nudge that line a little bit, just a little bit over?
Yeah.
You know, not taking away your right to hunt, not taking away your right to protect yourself, but like, it's such a infuriating argument. And I'm sure for you as well. It
is, because we regulate so much else, right? We regulate cars, from the seatbelts that we use to the airbags in cars to make them safer. We regulate the speed limit on the highway and
regulate
in neighborhoods.
Lyrics.
Right, exactly.
I have to put an E next to a song if I use an explicitive word.
Oh, really? Okay, well.
Like on Tidal or Spotify or whatever. Yeah. Tipper Gore.
Yeah.
Remember that?
I mean, yeah. I mean, all of it, right?
Yeah.
We regulate everything because we believe as a society that we want to put a premium on safety.
Yeah.
And we should. But guns, not only has there been this refusal to regulate guns, we're actually moving in the opposite direction. Yeah. You know, so in Texas, you don't need to get trained anymore.
Yeah. And am I wrong that police are, please don't do this? Like, this makes our job so much worse.
Yes.
I feel so bad for police having to walk, like, again, going into any of those situations against somebody better armed than you.
That's right.
Is insane.
That's right. And police unions and police leaders have come out against much of this legislation, and Republicans basically ignore that lobbying, and they ignore the pleas of law enforcement. And that's why in Mexico, the cartels outgun local law enforcement there. Yeah. We're getting to that same place here. I mean, look at what happened in Uvalde. Yeah. And the Texas Tribune did this incredible investigative work and found that, you know, part of what delayed the entrance into the school was because law enforcement knew they were outgunned and were afraid of getting mowed down.
Right. It's a stupid question, but what's the answer?
Elections.
Okay.
I mean,
it's not a stupid question. It's a great question and a great answer.
It's the question. It is absolutely the question. And people need to decide in this country, do I value the direction we're moving in on guns more than I value the life of those children? I don't know if you saw that image of that little girl in the school bus after the Nashville shooting. And it was this little girl looking out the window, and there was nothing but trauma and pain in her face, and she was sitting there sobbing. We haven't just created one generation of gun violence youth. We are creating multiple generations now, and the mental health trauma, that little girl and all those kids are going to live with PTSD. They're going to live with extreme behavioral health challenges because of what they've witnessed and what they've lived through. And people need to make a decision about it, and they need to make that decision at the ballot box.
I've always said since August 3rd, I've said that our community has community PTSD. Like, anytime there's a shooting anywhere, you can see it everywhere you go. And the idea that we now go, I mean, Christine said it the other day. We were walking into a store and she said, "Oh, I better take my phone." because of that. That's
Yeah.
insane. It's
Yeah.
insane that we have to think that way.
Yeah.
Because we're not strong enough or brave enough to vote for people that will stand up and say, okay, this is enough.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
So-
right. You know, we need to determine as voters what our top issues are, and evaluate our candidates on those top issues.
Yeah.
But you're right. We are actually, this community, everybody in this community is a gun violence survivor.
Yeah, it's insane.
It is insane.
F-
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for talking about that. I know it's super hard to talk. I'm sure you
It
do it a lot,
is.
but it's hard for me to talk about. I can imagine you
And
do
let me
it too.
tell you, it is still really hard for me to talk about.
Yep.
I was talking about it with a group the morning after the Nashville
Yeah.
shooting, and I'm still not over what happened to our community.
Yeah, I don't think we ever
And
will be.
I started crying in the middle of a meeting
Yeah.
because I was telling the story of what our beloved community went through, and how I have constituents who still need surgery to this day,
Yeah.
who still need physical therapy to this day,
Yeah.
who still need emotional therapy to this day, and many of them can't get it anymore.
And we can't even get this guy tried.
Right,
So there's not even closure on
Right.
the atrocity, like not even the beginning of it,
right, right.
which is insane.
Yeah,
But that's a different story.
that is a different story. That is a different issue.
So before we're done, and thanks for talking about that stuff, because I think the more we talk about it, and I'm trying, this is sort of my point, is I know you're out there trying to live the bipartisan life and make it work as long as you're standing up for our community and our values. And I wish everybody would do a little bit more of that. And I'm trying really hard to be that just as a guy in a band. Because I have fans, like I was saying, I have fans that are like, I don't agree with your politics. And I'm like, that's totally okay. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to. We
Yeah.
can talk about it. And I think music is such a beautiful place to get together and talk about that stuff because it's safe for us. Like, oh, we all like this. You know,
Yeah.
we can all sit around and talk about it. We can't get too far angry at each other because we're all here
Yeah.
sort of for the same thing. So I hope that we can just keep encouraging that dialogue.
And I love that you're doing that, Jim, because we don't do that enough. You know, we retreat into our bubbles.
Yeah.
The people who we agree with, the people who are like-minded. And social media has made that even worse. And the more we move away from civic engagement and community engagement, we isolate ourselves.
Right.
And then there's this, you know, you and I were talking about it before we started recording. There's this rage machine in our country, like this rage treadmill that everybody's on, and so quick to anger. And again, I am guilty of that sometimes as well. But some of the most meaningful conversations that I have had and that I've attempted to have, and that you are clearly attempting to have, are with people we don't agree with. And, you know, if we can take a breath and listen and think about where the other person is coming from, and be vulnerable enough to share where we're coming from, to try to find some way to connect in a human way and in a meaningful way, you know, maybe we can begin to rebuild, but also find some compromise and some common ground.
Yeah.
We've got to do more of that.
I mean, we are, and people always say this, but we are 95% all on the same page about most things.
Yeah.
It's just that whatever percentage that is
Yeah.
enough to get you riled up. And again, guilty of it, but
Yeah.
trying to slow down and,
Yeah.
you know, listen in my old age.
Good for you. You're a youngster.
What? No. What's your, before we go, what's your sort of the thing you look forward to most when you get home?
Oh my gosh, the incredible blue skies, my friends, my family, my kitties, my home. Like the minute that I walk off the airplane and into the El Paso airport, and I just see El Pasoans,
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God, I'm
I know.
home.
It's the best, right?
It is
Yeah.
absolutely the best. I mean, just being here, I always feel like I walk into an embrace when I come
Yeah.
home. It's just, and I've described this to a lot of people on the Hill about community, that it's just a community of love.
Mm-hmm.
And in the motto for us in our office is, we are going to lead with love.
Yeah.
And it's just a community all about love. I love it.
What a perfect way to end. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jim.
All right. See you guys next time.